is authentic living, which I think really resonates with a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's about shedding those masks we wear and embracing our true selves, imperfections and all.
So it's not about striving for some perfect ideal, but about accepting ourselves as we are.
Precisely. And by acknowledging and accepting our shadow, we create a more holistic and authentic self-image. And that paves the way for genuine self-expression.
It's like we're finally free to be ourselves without all the pretense and hiding.
Right. And that's a really beautiful and liberating thing.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about shadow work, and we're going to be taking a look at this concept as it's laid out by a holistic life coach named Violet Spring in her very insightful article.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. So in her article, Spring really dives into this whole concept of the shadow, which I think a lot of people have maybe heard about, but maybe don't fully understand.
Right, yeah, it's kind of this mysterious thing, you'll hear it and it sounds a little scary, like, what is this shadow?
Exactly. And it's definitely not about being negative or anything like that. It really encompasses all those parts of ourselves that we kind of repressed, both the positive and the negative ones, that we're not always conscious of, but that still end up shaping our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors.
That makes sense. I mean, we've all got those habits we can't seem to break, or those fears that hold us back, or even those times where like a wave of emotion just hits us seemingly out of nowhere.
Right. And those could be glimpses of our shadow in action. And what Spring really emphasizes is that understanding this hidden part of ourselves is super crucial for self-awareness and growth.
So it's not like this evil twin or something lurking inside us. It's more like a hidden reservoir of our potential, both good and bad.
Precisely. Jung, who was a pioneer in this field, actually proposed that the shadow isn't inherently good or bad. It's just this untapped potential containing not only like anger or jealousy, but also our creativity and passion.
So it's like this whole other side of ourselves waiting to be integrated into our conscious selves.
Yeah, exactly. And by doing that, we can actually live much more fulfilling lives.
Yeah.
And Spring highlights some key benefits that come with this integration. She starts with increased self-awareness and personal growth, which I think is a big one.
For sure. I mean, when you start to understand those patterns in your life, especially the ones you maybe tend to ignore, you can really start to make some positive changes.
Absolutely. And it can be especially helpful in those areas where we might be struggling. For example, maybe you keep finding yourself in unhealthy relationship patterns. Shadow work can help you uncover those underlying fears, like a fear of abandonment, and that awareness can really empower you to make different choices.
That makes so much sense. Because if you're not aware of those underlying fears, you're just going to keep repeating the same patterns over and over.
Right, and it's not about blaming yourself or anything. It's about shining a light on those patterns so you can start to break free from them. And that's what leads to real transformation.
And speaking of relationships, Spring also emphasizes how shadow work can lead to improved relationships.
Yeah, it's amazing how our unacknowledged shadow can impact how we interact with others and cause all sorts of misunderstandings and conflicts.
It's like we're carrying around this baggage that we're not even aware of.
Exactly, and then we end up projecting those unacknowledged traits onto other people.
So for instance, if I have a hard time being vulnerable, I might judge someone else for being too emotional, even though it's really my own discomfort that I'm projecting onto them.
Exactly. And shadow work helps us to recognize those projections and take responsibility for our own stuff, which ultimately leads to more genuine and compassionate connections with others.
That's so powerful because it's not about trying to change other people. It's about changing ourselves and how we approach those relationships.
Right. It's about recognizing that we all have our own shadows and approaching those interactions with more understanding and empathy.
And another benefit that Spring goes into is emotional healing. She suggests that shadow work can help us address those deep-seated wounds that we're carrying from past experiences.
Yeah, our shadows often hold the key to resolving past traumas, unmet needs, and those limiting beliefs that we might have developed in childhood or through societal conditioning.
It's like our shadow is holding on to all that pain, and by acknowledging it, we can actually start to heal.
Precisely. And Spring gives the example of a harsh inner critic that stems from being criticized a lot as a child. Through shadow work, we can explore where that inner critic comes from and challenge those negative beliefs, which can ultimately lead to more self-compassion and healing.
That's really interesting because it's not about just ignoring those negative thoughts. It's about understanding them and where they're coming from.
Right, and then we can start to reframe them and develop a more compassionate relationship with ourselves.
And the final benefit that Spring highlights is authentic living, which I think really resonates with a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's about shedding those masks we wear and embracing our true selves, imperfections, and all.
So it's not about striving for some perfect ideal, but about accepting ourselves as we are.
Precisely. And by acknowledging and accepting our shadow, we create a more holistic and authentic self-image. And that paves the way for genuine self-expression.
It's like we're finally free to be ourselves without all the pretense and hiding.
Right, and that's a really beautiful and liberating thing. And what's great about Spring's approach is that she doesn't just present these inspiring benefits, but she also provides a clear roadmap for actually embarking on this journey.
Yeah, she outlines 5 key steps to guide us through the process. And the first one is acknowledging the shadow's existence.
Right, so it starts with simply paying attention to those uncomfortable emotions, thoughts, and behaviors that we often try to ignore.
It's about not running away from those things, but actually leaning into them.
Exactly. Instead of suppressing those feelings, we start to view them as valuable clues that are pointing us towards our shadow.
So instead of thinking, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, we're saying, okay, what is this feeling trying to tell me?
Exactly, and that's the beginning of the exploration.
And the next step that Spring suggests is regular self-reflection.
Yeah, she emphasizes the power of journaling, and she even provides some insightful prompts to guide this process.
So it's not just sitting down and writing whatever comes to mind, but really using targeted questions to delve deeper.
Yeah, right. And these prompts are designed to help us uncover those hidden beliefs and patterns that are shaping our actions and reactions. Questions like, what emotions do I try to avoid? Or what traits do I judge in others? Can be really revealing.
It's like holding up a mirror to ourselves and really taking a good look at what we see.
And that self-awareness is really the foundation of shadow work.
And the third step in Spring's framework is identifying our triggers.
Those are the situations or people that tend to evoke really strong emotional responses in us, and they can be really valuable clues to our unresolved shadow material.
So if I notice that I get really triggered when a friend shares good news about their success, that might be a sign that I have some unresolved issues around worthiness or comparison.
Exactly. And by recognizing those triggers, we can start to understand what's really going on beneath the surface and start to address the root cause.
So it's not about trying to avoid those triggers, but actually using them as opportunities for growth and healing.
Right. It's about seeing them as signposts, pointing us towards those areas where we need to do some work.
And I think that's a really empowering perspective, because instead of feeling like we're victims of our triggers, we can actually use them to our advantage. And then Spring emphasizes the importance of embracing compassion as we're going through this process.
Yeah, that's so key. Especially because shadow work can be challenging. You know, we're confronting those parts of ourselves that we've maybe spent years trying to hide from.
So it's not about judging ourselves or beating ourselves up for having those shadow aspects.
Absolutely. It's about approaching this work with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend who's struggling.
Like we're holding space for those difficult emotions and those challenging parts of ourselves.
Exactly. And recognizing that even our shadow, with all its perceived flaws, deserves our love and acceptance. That's crucial for growth.
And the last step that Spring suggests is seeking support.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge that shadow work can be overwhelming at times, and it can be really helpful to have a supportive network to lean on.
It's like having a guide on this journey, someone who can help you navigate the tough terrain.
Exactly. Therapists, coaches, or even trusted friends who are familiar with shadow work can provide really valuable guidance and insights.
And they can also just hold space for you to process those emotions and experiences.
Right. It's all about creating a safe and supportive environment for this work to unfold.
So even with this roadmap, challenges are inevitable as we're going through this process of shadow work. And Spring addresses some of the common ones, offering valuable insights for navigating them. One that she talks about is fear, which makes sense. You know, we're venturing into uncharted territories within ourselves.
It's natural to feel some fear when we're confronting those aspects of ourselves that we've long avoided. But it's important to remember that it's not about dwelling in the darkness. It's about bringing those hidden aspects into the light so we can integrate them and become more whole.
So it's like we're shining a light into those dark corners and seeing what's really there.
Exactly. And that can be scary at first, but it's ultimately a liberating experience.
And another challenge that Spring addresses is the potential for emotional overwhelm.
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with some deep-seated issues here, so it's understandable that intense emotions might surface.
It's like we're opening up Pandora's box.
In a way, yeah. But it's important to remember that we don't have to go it alone. You know, equipping ourselves with grounding techniques like deep breathing, spending time in nature, or engaging in activities that bring us a sense of calm can be really helpful for navigating those emotional waters.
It's like having a toolkit for when those intense emotions come up.
Exactly. And it's about being prepared and having those resources at hand.
And another challenge that spring acknowledges is the resistance that many people experience when they're confronted with their shadow.
Yeah. It's not always easy to face those parts of ourselves that we've spent years suppressing. It can bring up a lot of shame or guilt.
So it's like this inner battle where one part of us wants to heal and grow, and another part wants to stay hidden and protected.
Right. And Spring's advice for overcoming resistance is to start small and progress at a pace that feels comfortable.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to dive into the deep end right away. It's about taking baby steps.
Exactly. And as we build trust in the process, we can gradually delve deeper. But it's important to honor our own pace and not push ourselves too hard too fast.
And Spring also provides a range of practical exercises to help us connect with and integrate our shadow. One that she talks about is the mirror exercise.
Yeah, that one's really powerful. It involves standing or sitting in front of a mirror, looking into your own eyes and speaking affirmations of love and acceptance.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It can be, but it's also incredibly transformative. It's
Right.
about confronting ourselves both literally and figuratively and allowing those emotions to surface without judgment.
So it's like we're having this direct encounter with our shadow.
Exactly, and that can be really healing and empowering.
And another exercise that Spring suggests is letter writing.
Yeah, this one's a little more gentle. It involves writing a letter to your shadow, expressing your fears, frustrations, desires, anything that feels authentic in that moment.
It's like giving voice to those hidden aspects of ourselves.
Right, and it can be really insightful to see what comes up when we allow our shadow to speak.
And Spring even suggests writing a response from the shadow's perspective.
Yeah, that can be really interesting. It's like having a dialogue with your shadow and getting to understand its needs and motivations.
Yeah, for those who are drawn to more contemplative practices, Spring recommends meditation and visualization.
Yeah, so in this exercise, you would imagine yourself in a peaceful setting and visualize your shadow waiting for you there.
It's like creating a safe space to meet your shadow.
Exactly. And then you can approach it with curiosity and compassion and engage in a conversation, asking questions and listening to its responses.
It sounds like a really gentle yet profound way to connect with our subconscious.
It is, and it can be really helpful for those who find it challenging to confront their shadow directly.
And Spring also emphasizes the power of artistic expression as a means of exploring the shadow.
Yeah, any creative outlet that resonates with you can be utilized, whether it's painting, drawing, sculpting, dancing, writing poetry, anything that allows you to express those emotions that might be trapped in your shadow.
So it's not just about talking about our shadow, but also about expressing it in a way that feels authentic to us.
Right, and sometimes those nonverbal forms of expression can be even more powerful than words.
So with all these different exercises at our disposal, it sounds like it's really about finding what works best for us.
Absolutely. There's no one right way to do shadow work. It's all about finding the approaches that resonate most deeply with you.
And I think that's really empowering because it gives us the freedom to explore our shadow in a way that feels safe and supportive.
Exactly. And that's what ultimately allows for the most growth and transformation.
So now that we've talked about the challenges and the exercises, I'm curious to explore the potential rewards of shadow work. What can we expect to gain by embracing these often hidden aspects of ourselves?
Well, the benefits that Spring outlines are really transformative. She highlights greater self-awareness and emotional intelligence as significant outcomes. As we delve deeper into our shadow, we gain a clearer understanding of our emotional landscape, and that allows us to navigate challenges with greater resilience and clarity. And this enhanced self-awareness naturally spills over into our relationships.
Yeah, so by recognizing and addressing our projections, we can interact with others in a more authentic and compassionate way.
Exactly. Communication becomes smoother and connections deepen as we learn to take responsibility for our own emotional baggage instead of projecting it onto others.
That's so important.
Yeah.
And one benefit that Spring mentions that I find really interesting is the potential for unlocking creativity and passion. It seems counterintuitive that delving into our shadow could lead to such positive outcomes.
It might seem that way at first, but when we embrace all parts of ourselves, including those we might have previously judged or rejected, we tap into a wellspring of creative energy and passion that might have been dormant for years.
It's like those hidden parts of ourselves hold a key to unlocking our full potential.
Exactly. And finally, Spring emphasizes that shadow work can lead to a profound sense of inner peace and wholeness.
And that makes sense because when we're no longer at war with ourselves, when we've made peace with all those different parts of who we are, we can experience a deeper level of acceptance and self-love.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that our shadow is not separate from us, but an integral part of who we are. And by accepting and integrating it, we create a more holistic and unified sense of self.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into shadow work, I want to circle back to a thought-provoking question posed by Violet Spring. She asks, what aspect of your shadow are you most curious to explore, and how might integrating it enrich your life?
That's a powerful question, one that invites us to reflect on our own personal journeys and consider the transformative potential that lies within each of us.
And remember, you don't have to embark on this path alone. There are countless resources available. Therapists, coaches, books, workshops, all can provide valuable guidance and support along the way.
The journey might not always be easy, but as we've explored today, the rewards are immeasurable. By embracing our shadow, we unlock the possibility of living a more authentic, fulfilling, and wholehearted life.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into shadow work. Until next time, keep exploring.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, leave a comment below, and be sure to subscribe and help us build this awesome holistic heroes tribe. And while you're waiting for new episodes, check out my other videos from these playlists.